It's Thursday. That means it's time for another round of investment advice from Market Advisory Group. And Jonathon McCoy is joining us again today. There's a lot of things happening with interest rates, with the Fed raising them, trying to fight inflation.
It's been a wild year.
Kind of be a cyclical process. One thing affects the other. Is a recession on the horizon, and what sort of things should us investors be thinking about and planning on right now that will be affected by this possible recession?
Well, if you start to look at the analysts' consensus, a lot of people are looking towards next year, 2023, for a potential recession setting in. And sort of the process that unfolds here, we've got the Fed raising interest rates, which makes it harder for people to borrow money, which makes it harder for people to spend money. People spend less money ultimately because of inflation. Then it starts to hit corporate profits. Corporations stop hiring as many people. Unemployment starts to rise, and these are the dominoes that fall as we lead into a recession.
So those things come with the recession that can impact people nearing retirement. What things should they be thinking about now? How do we plan?
Well, one of the things that we're keeping a close eye on is whether or not that unemployment number starts to rise a little bit into next year. Probably not this year, because the labor market is still pretty tight, and that's one of the closest watched data points there. So people nearing retirement, you have to think that they're the older and usually the most highly compensated employees. So if you are later on in your career, within those last maybe 4 or 5 years, thinking about retirement, you kind of have to keep an eye on whether or not your employer is going to be keeping you around for the longer run. How much flexibility and job security ultimately might you have? On top of that, you know, some of the stressors that we've had with the pandemic and other things like that, workplace environments changing a lot over the last couple of years. People are starting to anticipate maybe a little bit of an earlier retirement, at least from their current career position, than maybe they were thinking about before.
We've seen the market drop here recently, and I saw a couple of numbers this morning which are a little bit concerning. It's called, people talk about a bear market. What is a bear market, and again, how does it affect our investors?
So bear markets generally are defined as a drop in an asset's value of 20% or more. Now, there's no scientific explanation for why that happens or exactly where that number is. It's just a term that we've put to sort of describe what kind of market environment we're in. A longer-term bear market environment is usually indicative and sometimes can be predictive of a recession, because the market is always forward-looking at where do we see the economy a year, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. The market's trying to react to that beforehand, because you think about it, investors are trying not to get hit nearly as hard in the event of a recession.
Real quick here, this last viewer question we want to get to, and then I'll have questions for you after the show, because I still have more questions. This one is coming from Rick B. He says, my employer plan doesn't seem to be doing much to protect my money right now. What can I do to stop the bleeding? I'm too close to retirement to take much more loss. What do you say to Rick there?
Well, the first thing to understand is your employer plan custodian is not allowed to give you financial advice, and they will so much as tell you that on the phone or even on your brokerage statements through your 401k and things like that. Now, you can hire some of these custodians and pay them an additional fee for some advice. Our recommendation is normally to get more of an independent look at what investment options do you have in your 401k that may provide more protection, and if there aren't a lot of options that may provide protection inside of your plan, talk to an investment advisor such as Market Advisory Group in our case. Not to toot our horn too much, but that's one of the areas that we specialize in, especially if you're nearing retirement. What are some of those protective strategies you can put in place to make sure that your retirement goes according to your time and your plan? Well,
there's a lot to it. We know you guys are the experts on that. So again, thank you for your time this morning, Jonathon. And for you to schedule that complimentary consultation, submit your questions, visit askouradvisor.com or call 816-548-2000. They'll take your questions and even meet one-on-one free of charge. If you include your address, Market Advisory Group will send you a free gift.